This story is about a young boy that has shown a talent in magic since he was a kid. He was even hailed as a genius. But by the time he attended the academy, he found out that he was cursed. He cannot cast magic. That's when he got bullied and started to lose hope. Until something came up. Our main character received a system and made him a player. A god that is capable of destroying worlds gave him power. Now, if this got your attention, watch the whole story. The title of the manhwa is Mightiest Melee Magician. The story begins at the Ardell territory. In this small provincial estate, which is no different from a magic wasteland, a baby was born. The midwife informed the mother that the baby is a manly boy, and he looks just like the landlord. This midwife asked if the lady of the house had thought of a name for the child. She named the child Luin. He is Luin Ardell. The baby was so cute. The mother hoped that his child would be a light to the world. From the outside of the building, someone can be heard saying that he will go to the 8th Lake. Luin Ardell knew he was different from others since he was a child. While holding a book, he listened to the conversation of two men. The Lord told the subordinate to do his best in acquiring good maritime resources. The subordinate assured the Lord that he will. Luin called the subordinate Mr. Beggins. He told Mr. Beggins not to go to the street near the South Mountain since the flow of mana was weird there. Mr. Beggins asked what he meant, and he glanced at the Lord. Later on, the dark clouds came with several lightning and heavy rain. The Lord waited for him at the door. Since he was late, the Lord got worried. Mr. Beggins apologized and explained that it was because he took the long pathway. The Lord asked if something happened. Mr. Beggins shared that he was able to dodge a misfortune thanks to the young master. It made the Lord confused. Mr. Beggins explained that he was able to avoid the street near the South Mountain because of what the young master said. Then he found out that the place was attacked by beastmen. The Lord was taken aback. Mr. Beggins mentioned that everyone who went there fell in danger, but he didn't, and it was thanks to the young master. He asked the Lord if it might be because the young master can feel the mana in the air. The Lord replied that he wasn't sure, but if that would be the case, Luin will be the future of Ardell. Starting that day, Luin further kept on showing talent for magic. He sensed mana at the age of 6, and at 7. He was able to manifest it, and the year that he turned 10 came. There was a program, and there would be a speech from the student representative. Luin surpassed countless children of prestigious families at the Ignit Magic Academy, the best magic academy in the Radiant Kingdom. He was announced as the Valedictorian. He eventually enrolled as the Valedictorian with the title Genius. He took an oath in front of everyone. At first, he was overwhelmed, but he thought that his name would raise the status of his family. But that was how far it could go. At the training area, his instructor asked him to demonstrate the skills of the Valedictorian, which he immediately complied. On the first day of the class, he found out that he's not the best, not even the second best. He manifested flame in his hand, but it got big and it overwhelmed him. The instructor told him to release the fire, but he couldn't. He struggled controlling the flame as he wondered what was wrong. Everyone was surprised at what happened next. Magic Evocation Disorder. Luin's body lacked the innate ability to release magic, even just 1 meter away from his body. As a magician, his body was literally the worst. It only took a moment for the people to find out that he came from a common family that didn't have the talent. So, the attitude of the people around him changed quickly. When he was passing by in the corridor, someone intentionally bumped into him. A friend of this student asked the student who bumped into him if he's all right. He added that he's worried for his friend since his friend just touched a disabled bastard, and he was concerned that his friend would become disabled too. And the student who bumped into Luin replied that he better wash himself. Luin was branded as the person incapable of magic, a blemished man who couldn't even perform magic in the Magic Academy. To those who were envious of him, his current state was, the student who bumped into him asked what he's looking at. This arrogant student was about to punch Luin while uttering degrading words at him. And to those kinds of people, Luin was the best toy they could have ever had. A few moments later, someone punched the wall. It was Luin. He let himself be supported by a wall in a secluded place. He cried all his frustration and worries about becoming a magician, Luin Ardell. The name that had enrolled into the academy with the best grades, the name that was more promising than anyone else, the name that was more diligent than anyone else. But thanks to that damn curse, the magic genius that entered the academy with the highest grades turned into a magic cripple. That's how everything ended. He walked into the darkness. But he stopped and narrated that it was how he thought it ended, without even being able to imagine there would be a miracle at the end of despair. A notification window showed that the artifact player has been activated. Status window has been unlocked. Lewin was floating in the galaxy, and the artifact player has been activated. He eventually regained consciousness and wondered where he was. He felt like he's deep in the water. The system told him that he's the incarnation of Draka, the destroyer of worlds. He wondered what that meant. And then he noticed something unfamiliar. Before him is a large figure covered in a blue robe. It looked at him, and it revealed red, glowing eyes. He wondered if he's dreaming, but he knew that it was too vivid to be one. This man's lips moved, and Lewin noticed that it's trying to say something. And his eyes saw various colors, until it unveiled more colors that reflected on his pupils. Let's go back to a few hours ago before this incident happened, at the Ignit Academy training hall. Lewin Ardell was called by the instructor. He was asked to cast a fireball and hit the scarecrow. The person who gave this instruction is Heidel, the combat magic professor. Fireball is a magic that any student of the academy should be able to easily handle. But for someone incapable of magic like Lewin, it is such a difficult task. He looked sullen, as he got worried if he'll be able to do it this time. The instructor commanded him to begin. He decided not to give up and was hopeful that it might work this time. He wished to do it at all costs. He was firm that he's gonna do it. The other students were surprised at the size of his fireball. They wondered if that mana is really possible for a human. Heidel watched intently. Lewin thought to himself that if he kept going like that, he'd be able to succeed. But he felt something familiar that made him curse. He prayed for himself to hold on, but continuing made him groan, until he vomited. The professor called his name and he replied that he couldn't. Heidel instructed him to release it. He replied that it won't leave his hand. Heidel pushed him by reminding him that he's now part of the graduating class. And if he still can't handle such simple magic like fireball, he won't pass the graduation test. Heidel told him that he's destined to fail. He had absorbed that thought. He apologized and promised that he'll practice some more. In the practical shooting test, they're supposed to create 10 fireballs and hit the target multiple times. Our MC, who can't even discharge magic, let alone hit a target, can never become a third-rate magician. A student laughed and uttered on how a good-for-nothing entered the academy as the best student in his class. They all gossiped about him. Some even commented that he should give up, and some described him as the dunce of the academy. Lewin knew that since a humble local nobleman like him entered the academy as the Valedictorian, it caused feelings of inferiority and jealousy among his peers who hailed from prestigious families, which became a sufficient reason for them to be hostile towards him. He could handle their bullying, but the reality that he had no more hope began to break him down from his very foundation. That is one other than the curse that has been shackling him down for the past 6 years. Manhwa Evocation Disorder. Although he held up well until now, he began to frequently wonder how long he could hold on in the future. A few moments later, at the academy corridor, students talked about how their exam went, but not Lewin since he's alone. Then someone talked to him, calling him the duncehead Lewin. The blonde student told him that he should pack his bag, and that if he's in Lewin's place, he would be so embarrassed that he won't even show up. But Lewin kept persevering. He asked Lewin if he knew that the juniors called him. He's referred to as Duncehead Lewin. The blonde student blamed Lewin by saying that it's because of Lewin that the standard of the graduating class has fallen. So, he suggested for Lewin to just go back home now, back to the rural territory. Another student chimed in. He told Lewin that if he doesn't have skills, he should at least have money. But it was this student's first time hearing about the Ardell family. Then the blonde student supported that statement by saying that his father used to say that the Ardell are just fools who act aloof despite having nothing. Lewin grits his teeth as he holds back his anger. The student insulted Lewin's family even more, but this student wasn't able to finish his sentence, because Lewin's fist already met his face. The other student was surprised to see his friend being thrown to the ground because of the sudden punch from Lewin. Lewin dared this blonde student to yap again. The student had a big bruise on his face while his nose was bleeding. He cursed Lewin for daring to do that to him. Lewin told the student, whose name is Ben Folt, that he should have known when to stop. He was angry that Ben Folt messed up his family. The friend of Ben Folt attacked him while asking him if he has any idea who they are. But before he could reach Lewin, Lewin had already punched him at the stomach. His knees fell to the ground, and he curled into a ball. It was so painful that it made him drool. Lewin's attention was caught by someone who called him an arrogant bastard. Ben Folt was angry. He made a ball of lightning on his hands. Lewin was alarmed that Ben Folt is trying to use combat magic inside the academy. He released the magic towards Lewin while calling Lewin a trash with Manhwa Evocation Disorder. He wondered if Ben Folt didn't care even if he got expelled. The lightning ball travels fast towards Lewin. Lewin watched it, but he couldn't move his body. Heidel yelled at them to stop, but the attack had already reached Lewin. Lewin was covered in a bright light from the attack, and just like that, he thought everything was over. Later on, he received the status window telling him that he's the incarnation of Draka, the destroyer of worlds, and the status window has been unlocked. Artifact player has been activated. Lewin let out a sigh as he wondered what the hell is that. He had no idea on what's happening. He heard the figure before him say, "Del!" Eventually, he figured out that the figure actually called his name. He was surprised. Then he slowly opened his eyes. Before him is Helen, the high-class healing magician. She asked if he feels better now. He was surprised. He immediately moved to get up, but Helen stopped him. He asked where he is, and Helen replied that he's in the recovery room. Helen urged him to keep lying down. Lewin replied that he was just a little dizzy, but he could sit down. He wondered if he passed out. He recalled what he saw earlier. He wondered what it was, especially because it was so vivid. He asked Helen how long he had been out. Helen replied that it was almost the whole day. Helen told him that it's fortunate that it wasn't worse, and God still helped him. He asked Helen if he's all right now. Helen explained that they still have to check further, but so far, Lewin looked good for someone who was directly hit by a lightning bolt. She told him that he had no wound, burn, or not even a damaged organ. She had never seen anything like that. Even Lewin wondered how that was even possible. Lightning bolt is a scary magic that burns the entire body in a second. What's more, he took a direct blow. So, it's a mystery as to how he is totally fine. Someone entered the room. Helen told Lewin that since the professor is there, she'll leave so she can look further into the results. She told him to call her at once when something goes weird. Heidel asked him how he was feeling. He replied that he's all right. Heidel commented that it was good to know. He informed Lewin that there was a professor meeting about that incident. He then mentioned that Folt would be expelled because of use of offensive magic with strong intent to kill and spreading false rumors about the Ardell family head, and for the unfair treatment and bullying towards Lewin. All those acts lead to the verdict. Lewin replied that he also hit Ben. Heidel responded that there will be a punishment for him as well. Considering those facts, he will be doing the Academy's volunteer service for 1 month. Lewin accepted that without any protests. Heidel asked him about something. He asked if Lewin had the artifact. Lewin was confused, and then he replied no, since if he had that, he wouldn't have been bullied like that. Heidel replied that judging by the artifact's worth and how rare it is, the family head of Ardell would have used it for his people already. Lewin was curious as to why Heidel asked him that. Heidel stared at him. In his head, he recalled how a red light shrouded Lewin's body before the lightning bolt touched Lewin. To Heidel, it seemed like a high-grade artifact was protecting Lewin, which bounced off Ben's magic. Lewin asked what Heidel was talking about. Then he realized that it could be related to the dream that he had. He doubted that thought. Then he replied to Heidel that he doesn't understand what happened, but he's certain that he doesn't have an artifact. Heidel urged Lewin to take more rest. In Lewin's head, he told the professor the truth, that he had no idea what happened, but the professor didn't say anything more. That made Lewin curious as to what the professor was thinking. Lewin kept thinking about the experience that he had that can't be differentiated from a dream, and that strange voice, too. He remembered that he was told about an artifact, Draka, the destroyer of the world, and player. He's trying to think of one more thing. Then he recalled it was the status window. Upon saying that, it actually appeared in front of him. He was really surprised, and that made him scurry away from it. He couldn't believe that it was real. Helen approached him to check if he's all right. She thought that he's feeling unwell. But Lewin pointed to the screen in front of him and inquired if she could see that too. He described the blue thing in front of him. Helen was confused since there is nothing there. She asked again if he's all right. He was nervous that she couldn't see it. The blue screen displayed his name, and underneath that his description of being the incarnation of Draka, the destroyer of the world. Then it described player, an artifact of Draka that can summon the status window and limitlessly increase one's power through quests. His strength is 150 plus, agility is 100, and wisdom is 1550. Lewin then understood that this screen is only seen by him. He realized Helen was still there, so he decided to make an excuse first. He told her that he must have been mistaken. Helen gave a small laugh and told him that it wasn't funny. Helen told him that the result is perfectly normal and that he can go back to his dorms now. Our MC thanked Helen. Lewin looked back on the event that he's perfectly normal even after getting hit by a lightning bolt. Then the statement that he is the incarnation of Draka, the destroyer of the world, echoed in his head. He also remembered the man with red eyes that he met in outer space. And now he has a status window that is only visible to him. He entertained the idea that the artifact of the magician called Draka was transferred to him. Later that night, outside the training area, another weird window showed up in front of him. He was confused on what quest meant. The blue screen displayed the repeatable quest. His punch, kick, and spin kick are at 0/100. He received a reward strength +10 and skills unlocked. He thought of how punching and kicking is all related to strength. He wondered how is that going to help a magician like him. But he acknowledges that this isn't the time to be suspicious. He decided to try it first. He threw a punch, and the counter moved to 1/100. Then he punched again. It is now 2/100. That made him smile since the number is increasing. He thought that at that rate, he's soon going to reach the goal. He threw another punch, but the counter stayed 2/100. He looked at the screen and noticed that it didn't increase. That made him conclude that it isn't considered a success with even a slight mistake. He was pumped up to do it properly. The night had grown even deeper. Lewin was breathing heavily. He seemed exhausted, but he was happy that he's done. The status window appeared, and it showed that the quest had been completed. He received +110 strength and skills has been unlocked. He got curious about these rewards. Then he noticed something. He felt a strange sensation. It was faintly coursing through his blood vessels. He noticed that it's something more fundamental than mana. That feeling made him certain that he got stronger. He wanted to check it out. He delivered a powerful blow. Lewin was delighted. The strength that goes into the magic has gotten way stronger. The speed, air resistance, and destructive power, everything had definitely changed from before. He recognized that his fundamental strength has really gotten stronger. Then he got curious on what the other reward called Skill Unlock is. He commanded the status window to appear. It displayed details about Force Circle, a passive skill that replaces mana with strength. Mana circles will be replaced by force circles, and from then on, all magic will be affected by the player's strength. Replacing mana circles with force circles are new to him. He wondered if that meant that his mana will be replaced by his strength. All those who feel and study mana have a circle around the heart. The mana circle plays an important role in releasing and strengthening mana, increasing in number depending on the depth of mana and the amount of mana the magician can control. Lewin had 4 mana circles. It's way more than other kids of his age have, but because of his disability, it was like having none. Lewin was surprised. The mana circle really disappeared. Then he realized that the strength that's revolving crazily in its stead is the force circles, a force circle instead of a mana circle. There can be no magician without a mana circle. He pondered about what would happen to him in relation to the new circle that can't do what the mana circle can. He was sad at the idea that his life as a magician would end like that. But Lewin was resilient. He thought to himself that it's too early to feel down. He wanted to test it first. He made a fireball. He was taken aback how fast it happened. In addition to that, it's strong too. The moment he saw the size of his fireball, he realized something. that it was the power of an artifact. Because magic has a basic actuation principle, it takes about 10 seconds before the magic is released. But to be able to freely skip this step and create a fireball just with the power within his body, that is the power of an artifact. Then something caught Lewin's attention. The blue screen displayed about the Magician of Madness. It is a method of magic designed by Draka, who had trouble releasing mana. Lewin can attack enemies by loading magic into his body, and he can attack enemies by imbuing magic into his body. He is not affected by magic cast on him, and his strength is added to magic attack. Also, his magic damage will also deal additional physical damage. Lewin wondered how he would load magic into his body to attack. He wondered if by any chance that guy named Draka had a similar evocation disorder like him, and fought by imbuing himself with magic in his fists and legs. It made Lewin curious on how the hell Draka was able to come up with something like that. Then, a new quest appeared. The blue screen displayed a quest stating the demonstration of the method. Lewin was tasked to use the force circle and strength to hit a physical target. After he read that, he stared at the practice target in front of him. He never thought of that method at all. He entertained the idea of becoming a magician with that method. Our MC tried it out, and he released the fireball towards the target. He punched the target with his flame-covered fist. He was pleased that it worked. He had completed the quest, and as a reward, he had acquired plus 110 strength. He was exhausted, and he fell on his butt, and he went to lay down on the ground. He was glad that he did it, and the quest is finally over. He recalled how he failed at the stage of discharging magic every time, but he finally succeeded with his fist. It made him wonder what kind of person is Draka to be able to come up with this method. Lewin wanted to look into it, but his body felt heavy. Then he heard someone speak about him sleeping in that area. That person assumed that Lewin was training until dawn. They wondered if they should wake up Lewin. It was already morning, and Lewin was still sleeping on the ground. It made the person who saw him wonder if he's dead. But the other person argued that it's impossible since Lewin had been fine even after being directly hit by lightning. Lewin slowly starts to wake up because of the noise. There was a crowd surrounding him, and they were all surprised when he suddenly got up. He yawned and acted casual when he asked why everyone was there. To everyone's surprise, Lewin asked them if it's their first time seeing someone sleep outdoors. One student replied that in fact, that's really the case, especially that a nobleman who slept outside and abandoned the comfort of nice dorms. This student asked if Lewin drank or something. Lewin replied, "Drink my ass," and he explained that he was just exhausted when he fell asleep. They were all surprised at how Lewin behaved. They felt that he had changed. Then one student noticed the broken scarecrow. Only fragments with ashes are left, and they wondered if Lewin was the one who did that. But they thought it was impossible. At the academy dorms, Lewin was greeted by his roommate, a blond man with red eyes named Jason Damon, who is at 6th year on Ignit Academy. He was brushing his teeth when he asked Lewin if he stayed outside and is only coming back now. Jason was curious since Lewin doesn't usually leave the academy. Lewin told him that he doesn't have to know. Jason is the eldest son of the Damon family, famous for casting and mining metals. And to Lewin, who was treated like a loser in the academy, Jason treated him nicely. Jason teased him by asking if he met with a girl and stayed out all night. Lewin described Jason as a lunatic, crazy about alcohol and girls, and often leaves the academy secretly. Jason had a friendly vibe to him when he called Lewin a brat and teased him if he finally got himself together after being hit by lightning. He asked Lewin to tell him in detail. Lewin playfully throws his dirty clothes on Jason while he lets him know that he's about to go wash up. Lewin felt good getting in the tub. He remembered to check the additional quest. He uttered the word quest. The blue window appeared and displayed a repeatable quest called Body Training. It's basically the same of the previous window, except the number of times he needed to perform the actions were now doubled. Lewin noticed that the rewards remained the same, but the amount of training had increased twofold. He wondered if it will keep increasing twofold in the future. Just as he expected, it wasn't easy, but he did not lose spirit since it will help him become a magician. He slowly got submerged in the tub. 1 month has passed since then. He trained hard since the repeatable quest could be completed once a day. But contrary to the fixed rewards, the required training was increasing day by day. If a day passed without fully completing the quest, all his progress was reset to 0. So he made sure not to miss a single day. He thought of one good thing about it, which is the requirement of not going above 3,000 times each. He knew that if he did any more than that, he would have died from doing quests. He continued to train. The blue window appeared. Now, his punch is at 3,000 over 3,000, which has been tagged as completed. It was the same for the kick and spin kick, too. And since he had completed the quest, he got the reward of strength plus 10. He trained every day for the past month like that. And he even gained a new skill. It's a passive skill called Body Arts, which increases the abilities of the body. And the stronger and more elaborate movements become possible depending on his training level. It was a bright, sunny day at the academy. Students were gossiping how Lewin seemed strange lately. It's because Lewin was someone who used to not even blink in class, but he's now sleeping during class. Other students also noticed how Lewin practically lives in the training hall all day, and he was only seen practicing kicking. One student told them off to leave Lewin alone since it wasn't his first time acting strange. This student assumed that Lewin must be trying to overcome his disorder, but he believed that it wouldn't work anyway. And just like that, for the past month, Lewin has been completing the quests. He also chased after any clues about Draka, but he couldn't find any magician named Draka in any history records. Not only that, World Destroyer player, status window, quest. He couldn't find even a clue to any of those either. He kept wondering on who is truly Draka. He opened his status window, and it displayed his strength at 470, agility 100, wisdom 1550. As he stared at it, he kept wondering about the person who gave him that power. Someone called out to him. It was Jason, and he had news for Lewin. Lewin doesn't have any idea on what's happening. So Jason commented on why Lewin was just there leisurely reading books. Lewin asked if something big happened. Jason told him that the Ardell family head is there. Lewin was confused. So Jason rephrased it and said that Lewin's father is there. That made Lewin rush towards his father. He immediately caught his father's attention. His father was delighted to see him. They settled on a room to converse. Lewin stated that it has been 6 years since he was admitted to the academy since he was 10. He asked if his father had been well all that time. His father replied that he had always been well. Lewin asked about Luina, his little sister. His father informed him that his sister is all grown up now, and she's been learning swordsmanship. She said that it was to protect her weak older brother. Lewin expressed that he's embarrassed. His father commented that Luina had always been a bold one. Lewin called out to his father to say that he's doing well. His father asked what he meant. Lewin explained that he's doing fine and he's not hurt physically or emotionally. His father remained silent by taking a sip of tea. Then his father informed him the reason for his visit at the academy. It was to ask Lewin if he wanted to quit the academy. He told Lewin that if it's hard for him, he may return to their territory. He knew that his son had forcefully endured a lot of difficulties and things that he couldn't say. Lewin admitted that he knew why his father went to the academy after 6 years, but he told his father that he had found a way now. He asked his father to make a promise with him. His father was curious about it. Lewin told him that on his next test, he'll give a good result for the practical. With a serious expression, Lewin told his father that in return, if he fails this time, he will do what his father wants. After he promised him that he would get a good grade on his practical exam, his father, who understood his determination, returned to the estate after finishing their conversation. And then the day of the long-awaited exam finally arrived. The professor asked for their attention. He told them that it was the day of the Magic Introduction exam. He reminded them that any illegal activity will result in a failure. The exam had begun. The school exam is divided into written and practical exams. The practical exam is divided into 4 parts: targeting, magic power measuring, actual combat, and 1 versus 1 combat. As a person with Magic Evocation Disorder, Lewin has received perfect scores on written exams for the past 6 years. In the practical exam, Meikle from the prestigious Gary Hill family always came in first place. But this time, Lewin was certain that it would be different, since he will definitely come in first place in the practical exam. After all the written exams were over, they began the actual practical exam after a few days of operation. Someone called Lewin. It was Jason Damon. Jason told him that he'd been strange for a while now. Then Jason asked if Lewin has some sort of plans for the practical exam. He told Jason that he will try to approach the exam in a new way. Jason was delighted and he asked to confirm if Lewin really found a way. Someone called Lewin and asked him what he's doing there. This made Lewin and Jason turn their heads to see who it was. A blonde bully told him that it's useless for him to take the exam with his body since he has the evocation disorder. Lewin asked him why, and he told the guy that he's there to take the exam. This student pats Lewin's shoulder, and he told Lewin that he's an honor student, and the advice that he could offer to someone who has failed the practical exam 6 times, like Lewin, is to give up instead of going out there and humiliating himself. Lewin smirked at him and expressed that the advice isn't particularly helpful. But this guy did not stop, and he told Lewin that Lewin might be misunderstanding something since someone with a magic evocation disorder like him wouldn't be able to take the exam properly. This started to annoy Lewin, and he wondered what's up with that bastard. The guy wondered what's up with Lewin. Lewin used to act timid around him, but now Lewin was confident, and that pissed him off. He told Lewin that he will mess him up in the 1-versus-1 combat exam later, so Lewin should look forward to it. The first practical exam is targeting, and its official name is multiple target shoot-down exam. The exam method is simple. It's an exam to see how many targets can be shot down with one casting. However, unlike before, this year's exam had an increased level of difficulty, with the targets constantly moving. The instructor announced that Herc got 1 target, and Angelia got 0 targets. Because of that, the average grade was horrible. Then there was someone who got 4 targets. Another student got 3 targets. The instructors talked about the result coming out bad after slightly increasing the difficulty level. One of the professors expressed that the quality of the graduating class is miserable. One professor told them that it is still too early to be disappointed, and this professor told them that it will be Mikkel's turn, so they should look forward to it. The professor who expressed this is Professor Elric, the professor of magic potion making and Mikkel Garyhill's uncle. He announced that Mikkel is now coming out. Mikkel was about to take the exam, but he was thinking of showing off to Lewin. Mikkel had no idea what Lewin was planning. The instructor told Mikkel to begin. Mikkel determined the gap in their skill. With just 1 attack, he hit several moving targets at the same time. The students who were watching were amazed. They assumed that Mikkel would land in the first place again. Professor Elric was pleased and proud. He commented how Mikkel's performance is worthy of being called the descendant of the Garyhill family. He asked his fellow professors if they agree with him that Mikkel is the pride of their academy. He added that Mikkel would surely become the grand festival representative this year, and the old man told Professor Elric that it was enough. This old man uttered that the level of this year's graduates is not worthy of being watched anymore. This old man is Tyrion Ignit, the current academy's dean and a 7th-class archmage. Professor Heidel suggested to the dean to watch a bit longer since it's Lewin's turn next. The dean was surprised to know that Lewin Ardell is still attending the academy. And since this proves his passion, the dean got interested to watch. Lewin was dead serious. He sees this as a great opportunity to test his strength. The instructor told him to begin. He made a small fireball in his palm, and it immediately turned to a big flame around him. The professors were surprised with his ridiculous casting speed. The students couldn't believe their eyes. Meanwhile, upon seeing this, Mikkel got triggered. He told the amazed students that Lewin has a magic evocation order, and even if Lewin casts 100 of those, it's impossible to hit a target. He described Lewin as a useless trash who can't do anything. But our MC had suddenly disappeared from his place. Blue window appeared that indicates that time refraction is active. It distorts and refracts time for 30 seconds. And Lewin gained acceleration equal to 200% of his strength, and his movements became faster. Another blue window appeared to inform Lewin that he is moving beyond distorted time, and the cooldown is 5 minutes. This is a skill that he acquired recently, time refraction. It helps him move abnormally for 30 seconds to any location that he wants. In other words, Lewin is now a typhoon. The barrier of the exam area appeared. Lewin had made a massive damage in the surrounding area. The professors were dumbfounded, the same with the students. Lewin was happy with his results. The shards of broken targets were all over the area. The instructor announced that Lewin had hit 27 targets. They couldn't believe how Lewin casted the magic on his hands and hit the targets himself. and 27 targets would land Lewin the highest score in the history of that exam. They all wondered how Lewin was able to move so fast, and if he really hit that target with magic. Tyron Ignit clapped his hands, and he stood from where he's seating. He told Lewin that he was incredible. Then the students followed with a cheer. They told Lewin that he's awesome and congratulated him. Michael got angry, and he wondered how that happened. Internally, Lewin was happy with everyone's cheers and acknowledgement that he hasn't received in the past 6 years. His heart felt overwhelmingly hot. He always wanted to feel that. A few moments later, we see Professor Elric complain about Lewin hitting the target while casting magic on the hand. He argued that it doesn't belong to the realm of magic, and he had never seen that kind of magic like that before. Professor Heidel expressed that magic is a limitless realm of infinite possibilities. He added that if everything goes as expected, it won't be magic, but math. Professor Elric still tried to argue, but Tyrion Ignit motioned for him to stop. Tyrion Ignit expressed that what he saw is a miracle created by a student, and it was a flawless miracle of magic. He also acknowledged that other professors seemed to have different opinions. Deep inside, Professor Elric was furious. He's angry at Lewin for making such a mess. No one had ever thought that things would turn out like this. On the other hand, Jason placed his hand around Lewin's shoulder, and he happily announced that the Archmage was entering. He told Jason to stop. The other students were excited to see Lewin. As Lewin passes through, the students gathered around him and excitedly asked how he did that during the practical exam. Others asked him if he knew their name. He wanted to escape the attention, so he told Jason that he's going ahead first. In his head, until yesterday, he was just a loner in the academy. Everything changed overnight, so it was still hard for him to adapt. But of course, Lewin is aware that there are some people who don't like him. When he entered the room, he saw Mikkel waiting for him. He inquired what Mikkel was doing in his room. Mikkel approached him and told him that he seemed proud after gaining some points yesterday with something not even magic. He told Lewin that his arrogance sickened him, so he came to warn him not to show off. Lewin suggested to Mikkel that Mikkel is embarrassed that he lost in the practical exam to a guy who he looked down on for 6 years. That triggered Mikkel, and he grabbed Lewin's collar while cursing at him. Lewin grabbed Mikkel's hand. That made Mikkel shocked. He wondered what's up with Lewin. He also wondered how Lewin was so strong. In a serious, threatening tone, Lewin told Mikkel that they have to graduate safely. And if Mikkel wants to crush him that badly, he invites Mikkel to fight fair and square in the 1-versus-1 combat exam. Mikkel shook off Lewin's hand. Mikkel was angry when he asked Lewin if he really thinks he's qualified to compete with him when Lewin is someone who received only failing grades for 6 years. Lewin told him that they just have to wait and see whether he's qualified or not. Mikkel warned him not to fail the next exam before their encounter. Mikkel walked the hallway while thinking of how cocky that son of a bitch is. Mikkel was certain that Lewin would fail today's practical exam without having the chance to take the 1v1 combat exam. He took out his hand from his pocket. It was slightly trembling. He wondered if Lewin is truly a magician. Later that day, it was bright and sunny outside. There was a large statue, and one person commented that even if he saw that stone statue several times, it still never ceases to amaze him. It was the day of the second practical exam. The exam is called Mana Output Measurement, and they are at the exam site. A treasure of the Academy and a rare artifact of which there are only a few on the entire continent, ancient Ogre Kingram. 500 years ago, the Ogre Kingram was made into an artifact while still alive by the Archmage Freud. Kingram, who is trapped in the artifact, absorbs the magician's mana and acts as a kind of magic sandbag. The Mana Output Measurement exam requires students to cast magic on Kingram and get a high score. Lewin asked Jason if it meant that all they have to do is target the statue and use a spell that they're confident in. Jason replied, yes. But Jason shared that the ogre bastard is famous for giving harsh scores. Even a score of just over 20 is good enough. One student used a lightning storm to attack the statue. The statue told him, "Get lost, you one-point magician." Then it suggested to the student to quit practicing magic right now. One student commented that he thought the student did well, but as expected, it wasn't that easy. The statue called the next student. The student left dispirited. The next student was confident. She used an ice ball. The statue told her that he will definitely remember her because of how impressive it was. The student asked if that's true. But the next sentence of the statue was harsh, since he called her an irredeemable piece of trash. The statue gave her 2 points. She couldn't accept it since she gave her best. Next student got 5 points and was told to leave immediately. The statue told another student that his magic was bland, and the statue asked if it was mixed with water. The student furiously replied that it's 100% mana. The instructor told the student to stop making a fuss and go back to his seat. Next was Meekle Gary Hill. Meekle released all his magic. It all landed on the statue. The statue told him that for a Gary Hill, it's quite disappointing. He asked Meekle if he's Josh Gary Hill's son. Meekle proudly replied that he's the proud third son of Josh Gary Hill. The statue laughed at the word proud. He told Michael that his father was a duncehead who cried and begged for more points. And the statue told Meekle that he's less talented than his idiotic father, Mike Gary Hill. He gave Meekle 27 points. Meekle got mad, and he told the statue that for a mere ogre, he's spouting nonsense. The instructor told Meekle to quiet down. Then he called the next student, Lewin Ardell. Lewin admitted to himself that he's nervous for some reason. He told himself to just give it a try and he can do it. He told the statue that it was nice to meet him. Then he introduced his name. The statue commented that it's his first time seeing Lewin's face, and then he mentioned that it doesn't matter, so he urged Lewin to proceed with the exam. Lewin made a huge fireball on his fist. The instructor was shocked to see that it was an explosion mana burn. The students were surprised to see a Class 4 magic. The statue asked Lewin what his stance was about. Then Lewin announced, "Here I come." As he got closer to the statue, he leapt and kicked it hard. The instructor was taken aback with his movement, since it seemed impossible to move magic from the foot and explode it in an instant. The other student asked if it was really a Class 4 spell. The student replied that the power of Lewin's spell would have to be at least Class 5. Lewin landed on the ground with his feet. Since the other student mentioned that it could be at least Class 5, the other student concluded that Lewin could at least be a 5th-class magician. Lewin was caught off guard because he knew that his explosion mana burn worked properly. But Kingram's reaction is strange. He wondered if something went wrong. Kingram asked him who he was. Lewin replied that he introduced his name earlier. He repeated his name. But Kingram intercepted and asked him if he's Draka. That surprised Lewin. Kingram uttered, "I have been waiting for you, Draka." The students heard this conversation and were curious about who Draka was. They thought Kingram mistook Lewin for someone else. Lewin had searched all related books over the past 2 months, but he couldn't even find any traces of Draka. He didn't expect Kingram knew about it. Lewin asked him if he's familiar with Draka. He replied yes. Our MC inquired Kingram to tell him more about Draka. Kingram replied, "Interesting." He said that because he wouldn't have thought that he would meet Draka's incarnation at the academy. Lewin wondered what he meant when he said incarnation. Kingram asked for his name again. Lewin gave his full name. Kingram told him that he will remember his name. The instructor asked Kingram to tell him Lewin's score before he goes. But Kingram replied that there are many ears listening, so he'll just tell him later. He told the instructor that they will end the evaluation there and that Lewin's magic is not something he can judge. The instructor inquired what he meant, and the instructor insisted by reminding Kingram the school rules that states that he must provide evaluation for the academy no matter what. It was a contract that must be kept for 500 years. But Kingram replied, "Enough." He got infuriated that the instructor dared to bring up the school rules to him when he's someone who has been evaluating kids who don't even look like magicians for many years. The instructor apologized, but still insisted. Kingram told the instructor that he damned Ignit can go to hell for all he cares. But still, he acknowledged that a contract is a contract, so he'll just give the instructor a score, 0 or 100 points. He asked Lewin, whom he called Little Destroyer, which of them he wanted. Lewin smiled, and he expressed that he wants 100 points. The students gossiped how Kingram gave 100 points in his exam. They were all curious on to whom it was given. Some heard it was given to the lifelong failure student named Lewin Ardell. Lewin's attention was shifted to someone who uttered that he had caused another incident again. It was Professor Heidel. Lewin asked what he's doing there. Professor Heidel informed him that the news that Lewin got 100 points from Kingram spread all the way to the dean's office. When the dean heard it, he said that it had never happened before, so the dean wanted to reward Lewin. He gave Lewin a piece of paper. Lewin unfolded it and inquired about the artifact room that was written there. Professor Heidel invited Lewin to follow him. They entered the room, and they descended the staircase. Lewin expressed that he had no idea that the place existed. Professor Heidel told him it's natural since it's the only place in the academy where entry is prohibited. That made Lewin confused, since it's the only place where entry is prohibited. He wondered why the professor took him there. They stopped in front of the door. Professor Heidel explained that it's the entrance to the artifact room and he's only permitted until there. Lewin inquired if that meant that he's going inside by himself. The professor told him that he'll wait for him. Our MC had no idea what happened, but since the professor told him that it's a reward, he decided to enter. He walked along the carpet while looking around. There were so many artifacts that he only heard about. He assumed that it's the magic warehouse of Archmage Froyan Ignit. Someone said, "You look lost." It surprised Lewin, and he asked who it was. He was surprised and confused to see Kingram. Kingram told him that it's as if he doesn't know his true worth. And then Lewin noticed that Kingram is no longer a stone statue. Kingram seemed to notice that, and he asked Lewin if he's surprised to see that. Then he explained that it's the only space where he's allowed to use his body. It was thanks to the ancient mana that fills the room he can stay in his original body and not as an artifact. Lewin asked him what he meant when he said that Lewin doesn't know his true worth. Kingram told him that it's as he said, that Lewin doesn't know his worth, even though he's using the same artifact as Draka, the player. Lewin was taken aback that Kingram knew about the player. Kingram told him that it's a rare artifact like no other in the world. He inquired on how Lewin got it, and he also asked about Lewin's relationship with Draka. Lewin admitted that he's curious about that himself. He asked who on earth was Draka. Kingram observed his silence. Then Kingram told him that Draka is a being who wanted to become a god. Kingram narrated that one day, Draka came to visit the Skypeak tribe that Kingram belonged to. Kingram described Draka as short and small, which was unsightly to him. However, his power was so enormous that not even their Skypeak tribe could overcome it. What's more, he became stronger as the days went by. So even when several ogres attacked him, they weren't able to defeat him. The ogres respected him. He also lived with them as is, he's a member of their tribe. Draka taught Kingram, the next tribal chief, language and magic for almost 100 years. The shocked Lewin. He inquired on how it was possible for a human to live for 100 years. Kingram replied that it was possible since he wasn't a human. He revealed that Draka's true identity is the black dragon Dracagonia. Lewin couldn't believe that dragons really exist. He asked Kingram if it's really true. Kingram replied that it is true. He asked Lewin if he doesn't know that dragons are the origin of magic. In his head, Lewin thought of how he heard that before, but it was just one claim, so he thought everything was just a legend. Kingram told him that Draka could not use magic. That's why Draka created a way to fight like Lewin with magic on the hands and feet. Kingram asked Lewin if he knew what it meant now. Lewin understood. He was certain that Draka would have been treated the same way as him in the past. Kingram told him that Draka created an ability that only he could use, a way to bring magic to power like what Lewin had shown him. Using that power, Draka became stronger than any other being in the world. However, he was unsatisfied with that, and he expanded his power infinitely. In the end, he destroyed everything and destroyed himself. Lewin was taken aback with the news, but then he also realized why Draka was called the World Destroyer. He can't even guess how strong he must have been able to destroy the world. Blue window appeared, and it showed that Lewin had gained an achievement. It's called Finding Traces of Draka the First. The rewards included the title of Ogre's Friend. Skill is Ogre's Fury. Spirit Strang, the incarnation of power. The title Ogre's Friend has the effect that the probability that ogres will not be hostile towards Lewin, and it allows him to communicate with ogres. He was curious about this sudden reward. He saw that there's communication and thought that it was better than nothing. The Ogre's Fury is an active skill where he borrows the power of an enraged ogre and momentarily becomes stronger. Strength increases by 300 for 30 seconds, and this effect will gradually increase under the influence of body arts. The cooldown is 3 minutes. Lewin is considered a buff skill. He was curious about Strang, the incarnation of power, then suddenly a blue glass ball was in his hand. Kingram noticed and commented that it looked like he received the quest reward. He explained that Draca used to talk like that all the time while looking into space. Lewin asked Kingram if he knew about the ball in his hand. Kingram gladly took a look at it. He recognized that it's Strang. Lewin asked if he knew about that item. Kingram corrected him that it's not an item but an incarnation. Our MC couldn't believe that it's an incarnation. Kingram shared that it's always next to Draca, so there's no way he wouldn't recognize it. Given its current state, he assumed that Draca must have sealed it in a spirit stone when he died. That guy is an incarnation of power. Although he's called a spirit, he is different from normal spirits. Kingram described him as someone who had a nasty temper and would ask Draca for infinite power every day. However, if Lewin satisfies his desire, Strang will also promise him infinite power. Lewin verified if he meant that an incarnation will be born from the rock. Kingram replied that it was the case, so he doesn't have to worry too much. The rock glowed. Kingram commented that it looked like the spirit will now wake up. Lewin slightly panicked that it's breaking. Then it appeared. Lewin was surprised to see a small bear on his palm. The bear said, "Brat, did you just call me a bear?" Lewin commented that a bear can talk. He wondered how a bear can talk. This angered the bear. It scolded Lewin and told him to stop treating him like a bear. But honestly, it was a cute brown bear. That's all the time we have for today. If you want to watch the next part, please like and subscribe. Thank you, and see you on to the next one.